Big trouble. Real big trouble. That is the first thing that came into my mind when watching the overlap. When listening to what Big Ange Postecoglou was saying about the way Tottenham operate, the way they're nowhere near an Arsenal. When you look at the way a Manchester City and a Pep Guardiola get to move, Spurs are in big trouble because they have a champagne appetite. The fans have a champagne expectation with the new stadium, the surroundings, the PR, but they're operating on a lemonade budget. Now, that might be a little bit of a hyperbole for some people, but I'm going to tell you why they're in big trouble, and I think they stand a massive chance of going down. And some of it is connected to Arsenal. Some of it is connected to the likes of Manchester City and how they operate. But overall, it was such an enlightening interview from Big Ange, and we don't get to see too often a manager sit down and discuss in that kind of detail the problems they faced at their club. Now, of course, there are two sides to every story, but before we go any further, please hit the like button, get yourself subscribing right now, get that bell notification button turned on. There's always two sides to every story. And no matter what's going on, there's always two sides to a story. And I just want to start off the bat by saying Ange didn't always get his tactics right. I think that the element of pragmatism he demonstrated in Europe, he should have done this more in the Premier League. There's no doubt about that in my mind. And I won't rewrite history for him as a coach and the things of which I said. However, with new information, with new facts, with a new side of the story, everybody's opinions. I always feel in life, if you are a relatively sane, at least mildly educated, decent IQ individual, new information should change your mind somewhat. And listening to Big Ange talk about how when you look at an Arsenal and they're growing and they're getting better and they're looking like they want to win titles, they go out and spend a landmark amount of money coupled with the salary that the player like Declan Rice needs. And it's so interesting that he used Arsenal as an example, because for me, the fans and the club being very happy to go out and lose against City, which cost them a Champions League position, which in turn stopped them from being able to buy better marquee players. The fact that was celebrated by so many Tottenham fans, the fact that the club didn't seem bothered by it, was an eye-opener. For a team whose identity for me is too shrouded, too closely connected to what Arsenal do, to then hinder themselves, that the expression my grandmother would use is cutting off their nose to spite their face, is abhorrent. And you can see that we all could see it as fans watching football, that Big Ange Postecoglou from that moment started to lose a connection with Tottenham fans and the board. And then what we hear about is how they came fifth, slightly missed out on the Champions League, but the manager is saying, look, can we go out there and push for Brian Mbeumo? Can we go and try and land Mark Gahey? And instead of this happening, Dom Solanke, decent signing, as he said, and then three or four youngsters. Now, these young players, Big Ange is not attacking. He's not slagging off. He's not saying the club shouldn't be investing in. But it was those tried and tested, proven players. Now, some of those can come from the Prem. Some of them can come from elsewhere. But it's about a mixture. And Tottenham, in the second summer of Ange Postecoglou, after they came fifth, didn't improve the squad enough with players that were ready to go, didn't listen to the manager whatsoever, went down the wrong road. And I still think we as football fans are seeing the fruits, the poorly formed, unripe, sour tasting fruit of that terrible labor. And why do I say they're in big trouble after listening to what Big Ange has got to say? Well, you only have to go back to why Poch left Tottenham. Now, of course, a run of bad results played a part in this. And of course, Ange's bad results played a part in it, and he is not completely free of guilt. But if you actually go and read deeper into what happened between Poch and Levy, money wasn't being spent on players, even money that he wanted to spend and invest in the training ground to have like a state-of-the-art cameras put in so they could have multiple views of training, so they could, again, nitpick. And nitpicking when you're trying to become a great team is important because every little inch, every little marginal gain will help you. This was rejected. And I feel that Tottenham fans would agree with Poch because most love him. Some might disagree with Ange because of how poor the league form was. However, there's a common theme here. And it's that Spurs might spend a lot of money on transfers, but just won't quite go far enough to pay the wages so that those transfer fees are bringing in the better players. And I feel that when you have this big stadium and you have a fan base that want beautiful football, you bring players in and what you speak about is Champions Leagues and progressing and winning. You've got this sort of champagne attitude and they're not quite spending lemonade money because they're spending almost as much. I think they've actually spent more than what, since Arteta has been at Arsenal, more money has been spent. But it's when you look at the wages, that's when the world changes. And I've said this before, I'll say it again, net spend is not a real measure that you or I should really use. You have to look at the total costs of a squad and the level of salary, bonuses, image rights that Spurs are prepared to pay is much lower than Man City, much lower than Liverpool, much lower than Arsenal, Man United, Chelsea. And that stops them from, one, being able to attract or get the Mbumos, the Declan Rices of this world, and therefore holds them back. And as I've already said, this is why I think they're in big trouble. I don't believe that they're players. I don't believe that anyone who's been signed to that club has come in there with any thought, any feeling, any mental preparation for being in a relegation battle. I've been watching the Winter Olympics, and I always love Olympics because it reminds me of my sport. My sport was freestyle martial arts. It wasn't an Olympic sport, but it was one where multiple nations came together. There was multiple disciplines within the sport as well. So it wasn't just points fighting. It was points fighting, light continuous, full contact, numerous types of kata, katas, traditional katas, soft form katas, freestyle, musical, weapons, etc. Now, some of you are going to understand what I've just said. Some of you are going to go, what the hell does that mean? I'll go into it another day. So there's multiple, it almost felt like multiple sports because some of them didn't even look the same, but they're all from the martial arts background. And I love watching it, but it brings these memories back to me for me as a younger man. And my first couple of major tournaments, I wasn't expected to even get near the final, let alone to get past the first heats and get into the final, let alone win a medal. And you prepare for that when you go in, because as much as people go, oh, coaches have always got to set you up with elite mindset. They do, but it's all about timing. My coach trained over 300 world champions, but when you were on the way up, he would very much temper your expectations with, look, you're doing very well. These are the tournaments you're winning, but the standard here is X, and I want you to work towards it. Don't be too disappointed if you don't come in the top 10. Don't lose your mind and crash out if you come 20th. And I've seen that in the Winter Olympics. Some people are doing certain events and they're coming last, but they're still kind of clapping the crowd and not quite happy because they know where they are sort of within their journey. I think the Brit that won the skeleton last night, the male who won the skeleton, his name eludes me and I'm very sorry to say it. The last Olympics, he came sort of like 15th or something because that's where he was at that point and he knew what he was working towards. The reason I bring this up is defeat or struggling or being down near the bottom is easier to manage and progress upwards from if you know where you are and you're kind of where you're meant to be at that particular moment. But with the players Tottenham have signed, the attitude the club has, there's been no thought, no contemplation, no feeling that they would be in that area, which is why when you see a very, very good team lose a game of football, you often see them losing their tempers. When you see a tennis player or an athlete at the Olympics who's meant to be a shoo-in for a gold or at least a medal at the very least, have a really bad run, race, heat, go out, or has a really bad tennis match and being beat by a very wide underdog, the reaction from them can often be quite nasty, can be quite aggressive, can be quite angry. But one thing that happens is they stop playing. They can get worse because they're not where they're meant to be mentally. And I feel that listening to Big Ange, looking at the history of Poch leaving, where they currently sit, and the hiring of Igor Tudor, and I'm not even trolling here, Tottenham fans. I have no idea who that man is. 41% win ratio in his career so far, and he's just moved to the hardest, toughest league in the world. I think if you get the new manager bounce and win 2 or 3 or 4 of your first 5 games, you're going to stay up and you're going to be okay, and it'll be job done. Start badly and lose the first 2 or 3. This man and Tottenham really could be in big trouble and really could go down. As ever, cannot wait to get your views, your opinions on this. Like, share, and subscribe, and we're going to see you all again very, very soon. Peace.